Welcome to the Viper video trainer for scorecard design. Viper web app includes an easy-to-use scorecard designer to create your own scorecards for any kind of scoring format with unlimited presentation capabilities. When you are designing a scorecard, it is helpful to select an event that fits the type of card you are designing. So for example, you would open a 4 or 5 person team event for building a team scorecard. Or you would select a 2-person team event for building a 2-person team match scorecard. Or if you're building an individual scorecard, you would select a 1-person team event, or whatever type of an event you are building the card for. If you're planning to pop the scorecards for player handicaps, the event should have adjusted handicaps for the players, as scorecard reports will use the adjusted handicap in the player grid for any hole pops. There are also several other fields that can be added to scorecards for any event, and when you click the reports icon, the report options screen opens automatically to show these fields. Report options are set for each event you are working with and are specific to the currently open event. To dot the scorecards with adjusted handicaps for the event, just check the Pops on Cards checkbox. Viper will then pop the cards based on the handicaps for the T or Ts selected for the event. There are up to 4 scorecard line descriptors you can add for any event, and you choose which lines to print the scorecards on in the scorecard design process. There are also 2 user text fields for each event, which can also be added to the scorecard design. Once you have set all the report options for the current event, press the Save button to save them. You can then go back to the Reports menu, and from Scorecard select Designer Scorecards to open the Scorecard Designer screen. When the Scorecard Report Designer screen opens, the first thing you need to do is select a course. You may only have one course, but if you have multiple courses, you need to select the course you're designing the card for, because scorecards are designed by course. Each course may have different tee boxes, hole pars, handicaps, and so each card has to be built by course. So after you have selected a course, then you need to select Create New and create a new report name. You should keep in mind that you can have an unlimited number of scorecards, so you should try to name the card well enough to understand which card it is to select it for future events. So once you've given a report a name, the report designer will open so that you can actually start working with the card. If you notice across the top, there's a series of tabs: report properties, course tees, page fields, grid fields, graphics, and grouping and sorting options. The first tab, Report Properties, defines how the scorecard is set up, page size, size of the card. So we're going to choose letter size paper, but you can set any size, including custom, and create a unique size for paper. But we're just going to use letter size paper in portrait orientation. And you'll see that you have a choice of 1 or 2 up, and we're going to select 2 up. So now once we've done that, you can see that there's a gray line around the outside of the card. This defines the actual border of the card, so of a single card. So we're designing a card that's 2 up letter, 8.5 by 11 paper size. So a half a sheet, because it's 2 up, is going to be 8.5 wide, 5.5 high. That is the board. That is the actual size of the card that we're working with. So there's a couple of elements here to describe. First is the border. The gray line is the actual size of the full scorecard, and then within the red lines is the grid. This would be the rows and the columns of the scorecard as you define them. And you can see that the grid, the row grid, is adjustable, so I can adjust the height, moving the top up and down. Wherever I set the top red line, that becomes, anything above that becomes the header, so the space between that and the gray line is the header of the scorecard. Similarly, wherever I set the bottom of the row grid, the space between the gray line and the red line at the bottom defines the footer of the scorecard. And the footer and the header can be used for all sorts of things. I could put logos in the top, I could put graphics of hole layouts or pin placements in the top, whatever you want to put, because there's an unlimited amount of graphics that you can add to a scorecard. So back on the report properties, to look at the other options that you have, The first checkbox there, which we skipped by, is the pre-printed card. The purpose of this card is to allow you to go out and select a scanned image of your scorecard and drop that into the area of the page size that you have created, so that you can see the layout of the scorecard. Then that allows you then to drop in the names, hole pops, and that sort of thing. But we're not going to be describing much other than the brief summary of that in this video. So the other options on the report properties, there's a checkbox for print name on cards. And what that's for is to fill the space here that shows course name optional. And purpose for that would be if you have a multi-course facility or 27-hole facility and have multi-rotation options, you can then print that name of the course on the scorecard that you're creating. So east-west, perhaps if it's a 27-hole facility and you're playing the east and west nines, that is the option for print name on cards. So our next option on report properties, number of rows is significant. We'll review that in a second. You also have the option for additional columns. So here we've just got the whole numbers out, in, and total, but you have the option to add a handicap column. You could add player initials if you wanted initials on the card and fold it, and a net score box. So we're going to add handicap and net to this. You also have the option to put a marker tab on the scorecard, whether you're doing a team event or maybe an individual event, and you want to have a marker tab for the scorer. So checking marker tab then gives you the option to place a marker tab either on the top of the card or the bottom of the card. And you'll notice that when I check top, the marker tab appears there. So now I need to, of course, size my scorecard accordingly to accommodate the marker tab that's at the top of the card, or if it happens to be at the bottom of the card. We're not going to put a marker tab on this scorecard though. So again, once we've defined how much header and how much footer space that we're going to have for the scorecard, then the number of rows comes into play. So how many rows will we need? Well, we're going to have a 3T scorecard. We're going to have one row for whole pars. All the pars are the same on all the T's. We're going to have two handicaps on this scorecard because this course has a men's handicap and a women's handicap, so I'm going to put both those on the card. And then we're going to have a couple of scorecard descriptors. So we're up to about 13 lines with, well, let's see, if we have up to 5 players on the scorecard, then we're up to about 13 lines. So we're going to set this to 14. So we've got one extra row in there in case I want to do something else. So now that we've got the row grid set up for the scorecard, then we can start dropping the tournament fields into the scorecard and into the scorecard grid. So that's what the two tabs for page fields. These are mostly the fields that will drop into the header and the footer area of the card, although you can place them anywhere, except for the scorecard descriptors 1, 2, 3, and 4. We're going to drop those into the grid. There just wasn't enough room in the grid tab. So in the grid field, which grows depending on the course configuration, you've got the players, player number if you wanted a player number next to the player's name, like a GIN number. Handicaps for the players to match the number of players that you put on the card, whether you wanted to put the gross from net score, if it was a completed scorecard. The T box label, meaning white T's, blue T's, whatever. And of course the handicap fields. So we're going to start with the course and T's, and the T's that we're going to put on the card, we're going to just put 3 T's. This is going to be a general tournament card, which we don't usually play the back T's for outside events. So we're just going to add the 3 T's, the 2 men's T's and 1 women's T. Once you check the T's to add to the card, you can see that it drops them into the card. So now I can click on them and drag and position them anywhere that I want. So we'll take the 3 T's, position them on the first 2 rows for the men's T's, put the copper T on the first row. The other option that you have is that when you click on a field to select it, the properties for that field will come up. For T's, you have a descriptor field, which you can change to be anything that you want. You can type whatever you want in there. but you have a font selector for the descriptor, which is the name of the tee, and a separate font for the yardage. And you can see that because the yardage columns are so narrow, we need a much smaller font in order for the yards to fit into the whole number columns. So we're going to set the T descriptor to 11 point. We're going to set the yardage font 8 point, and just as a point of reference, when you're doing a letter portrait scorecard, 8 point is about as large as you can go for the yardage to fit in, to get 3 numbers to fit in a column. When you do a landscape card, then the card's obviously wider. You can set a larger font size, maybe a 9 or 10 point font. And you'll know if the font is too big because the yards, like the total, in and out total, will kind of roll down to another row and not print all across in a single row. So that is an indication that the font's too big and it's rolling over, so you just need to come back and adjust the font to make it a little smaller. We're going to set this to Arial and normal font. The other option that you have with T's is to add the slope and the rating for any selected T. You can also adjust multiple fields at the same time. So I've got the copper T selected. I'm going to also hold down the control key and click on the silver and jade, and that way when I enter my settings for the font size and the descriptor, it's actually setting them all. You can see they're all being set at the same size. So we're going to set them all to Arial, 11 point for the descriptor, 8 point for the yard font. And I do want to print slope and the rating on here, so now I need to select them one at a time in order to say that I want the men's slope and rating for the copper tees, men's slope and rating for the silver tees, and ladies slope and rating for the jade tees. And if I had a tee that I needed to put both men and women's slope and rating, you can just check them both and it'll actually make the font smaller for the slope and rating and squeeze them both into the row. Normally when you add a T to a scorecard, which kind of will be populating the whole row and that all the yards will be filling in across the scorecard, the scorecard designer knows where the yards are supposed to go, so you don't usually have to worry about the width of this field. But because I'm putting the slope and the rating in the card, I do need to set the width of these fields so that the slope and rating won't get outside of the name column box. So I'm going to squeeze down the size of this width of these fields a bit, and then we'll see where the slope and the rating print. But I think at this width they will fit inside of the name column. So now that I've got my T's added to the field, I'm going to go to the grid fields and I'm going to select whole pars, and it'll put a par in here for each T box because it is possible for each T box to have different yards. In this case all the pars are the same, so I can actually pick any one. I'll just pick the silver whole pars and drop that down into the third row where I want it and position it. Click on it so that I can adjust this field, and one of the options is to change the descriptor. So instead of saying silver pars, I'm just going to say par, and we'll make this 11 point Arial and we'll make it bold. Next field, and I won't worry about the width of it because it'll know how to fill into the rows. Next I'm going to go down and I'm going to add both the men's handicap and the ladies handicap. I need to know which is which. The last field that dropped in here is the ladies, so I'm going to put that down at the bottom. And then I'll put the men's up at the top of the card. Click on these two fields together to set the font at 11 point Arial, not bolded. And then I need to select them one at a time to change the descriptor. This is going to be men's handicap, and we'll make this ladies handicap. And now I've got the whole pars and handicaps and the T's added. I need to add some players, so we're going to put up to 5 players on this card. Even though there's only 4 players in this event and only 4 will show, I do want to set it up for a 5th player should I have a 5-person event. So now I'm going to grab the player names and drop the names in here, and when you drop the players in, you want to get them near the top of the row. Reason being that we've got hole pops to deal with, and so placing the name near the top, not quite at the top, but near the top of the row, will let the whole pops print also near the top of the row. Alright, so I've added my 5 players, selected them all, set the font to what I wanted the font to be, and then I also added, from the grid fields, I added the 5 handicaps to match the players, set the font and the font size for them, and set them all to be right justified, so the font or the handicap will print at the right edge of the box and grow to the left. Now I need to add a couple of scorecard descriptors. So actually from the page fields I'll add scorecard descriptor 1 and 2, drop those into where I want them to print on the scorecard near the bottom of the row. And I'll set the font and size. I'll center justify these, and I do need to set the length of these because scorecard descriptors would print across the rows if I don't restrict the width to stay within the column. So we've got a pretty good start on the scorecard. I can take a preview and see what it looks like at this point. So you can see the scorecard starting to take shape, and the importance of using an event with hole pops, so you can see where the hole pops are going to come out. One thing you notice is that the whole numbers are overflowing into another row. That means that the font size is too large, so I need to go back and reset the whole number property. So under report properties and whole number properties, I need to set that font size to like 10 point Arial, and that should stop it from overflowing. So that'll happen with any font that's too large. So if the T yards is too large of a font, it'll overflow like that. So we'll take another look at this, and you can see the whole numbers are looking a lot better now, and the whole card's starting to look pretty good. So the remaining fields to be added to the card are like event name. So these would be some of the page fields. So event name, starting time, starting T, starting time label, T label, team number, and at the bottom of the card, labels for score, attest, and date signature row. So we will add all of those fields to the report and take another look at it. So I've got a pretty nice looking scorecard, and we're going to add one more feature to the card, which is provides a lot of capability for the scorecard. So just to review, I did go and add the handicap fields for players 1 through 5. And now a couple of important things I need to review. Grouping and sorting. This scorecard is grouped by team, so it's going to have one team on each scorecard. But there are options to group by player. So if I was doing an individual one-to-one person scorecard, one scorecard per person, even if I had 4-person teams or something, I can force it to print one card per player by selecting to group by player rather than by team. And I can group by T and time, and where that's important is if I had 2-person teams and I wanted to put 4 players on the card, I can position these player names anywhere that I want. So I could position player 1 and 2 for team 1 of 2-person matches, 2-person team matches, for example. Put a scorecard descriptor or 2 underneath the first 2 players, and then put player 3 and 4 with scorecard descriptors 3 and 4 under those 2 players, or whatever I wanted for descriptors for a 2-person team match scorecard. And then if it's a shotgun, I could group by T, and so everybody on 1A is going to print on the same card, even though it's 2 teams. Or if it's time start, I group by time. So that's the importance of grouping and sorting. There's also the ability to add up to 6 graphics, logos, like I said, graphics of pin positions or whole layouts, whatever you want to put on the card. But there's also a very cool option to add a resizable box or line to the card. So I've clicked that. If I click it again, it would add another one. I just would keep adding them. One of the capabilities of this would be if I wanted to color the rows. So I can select a color. Clicking on it gives me the option to pick whatever color I wanted. So if I wanted that copper, and put that up on the copper T and make the color copper, I could make the font white then on top of this, or make it bold, whatever. But you'll see that when I now preview, I have a colored row, and I could tweak that a bit to get it to fit exactly in the row. But that then allows me to build pretty much a full color card with all the rows colored any color that I want them to be. Or another option of this would be if I had combo tees and I just wanted to show that the holes 5 and 6, for example, where you're using the copper tees on this combo tee or whatever. So that's a couple of options for how to use the box. Another option, we're going to drop this down to the bottom, and we're going to actually create a box that is our scoring box, signature box. So if I make the box whatever size I want it to be, I'll make the line black, and I'm going to unfill it. So right now it's filled, but if I uncheck the fill box, it now becomes a box, not just a solid color, but a box. So using that option, I can create a signature box. So you can now see that I've created basically a signature row at the bottom of the card by using a box with the outline and no fill color in the box. So the last thing we're going to do for this scorecard is put some of the tournament specific information on it. So team number, team label, starting time label, and starting time, starting tee label, and starting tee. So I've positioned all of those right at the very top of the scorecard and set the font size, and it takes a little bit of tweaking to get it where you want it, but once you've got it set up, it will produce a nice looking tournament card. So once you've got a scorecard built and you've got all of the fields laid out the way that you want, building additional cards gets a whole lot easier, because now I can use the export function. So I can select export, and click here will actually create a file that's now in your downloads folder for the scorecard layout. So I can show that in the layout, and here is my scorecard layout that's been created and dropped into my downloads folder. So I can save this anywhere that I want now, and what that means is that now I can build a new scorecard and import those settings. If you're going to import settings, you must always build a new card. You don't ever want to import any settings into an existing card, because it'll overlay some of the stuff that's already there. So for example, I'm just going to create a test card just to show you how this works, and I'm going to then import the settings, choose my file, and import it. And you can see that it's imported all those settings. I'm going to tweak the bottom of the grid a little bit, but now here is my card that we had just created previously. So now if I wanted to drop different tees into it, make it a single card, change the number of rows, whatever, I've got a lot of the scorecard already laid out the way that I want. So the export import options just helps facilitate building additional scorecards. So the last thing to show is building a facility card, that is to print on your own scorecard. So to do that, you need to create a custom page size and set the page size to be the exact size of your scorecard. We are going to use pre-printed, so we don't need any of those other fields. As soon as you check that, then it'll drop those changes. So I'm going to set that page size and then click the locate pops option, which will allow me to go out and browse and find the scan of my scorecard, my facility scorecard. Once you've selected your file, then you need to resize it to fit the page size that you've created, the exact page size that you've created. Once you've got your scorecard set up and the page size set correctly so that the printer knows what size scorecard you're going to be printing on, what size paper actually you're going to be printing on, you can then, just like the regular scorecard designer, start dropping fields into it. You obviously don't need the course tees, handicaps, pars, or any of that information, but you do need the grid fields. So player 1, 2, 3, 4, just to show you how this works. Drop these players into the where I want them to print on my scorecard when I feed this scorecard into the printer and set the font, and it's obviously got to be small because there's not much room on this particular scorecard for the names to fit. But once I've got the names dropped in there, then I can add any tournament field information that I want: starting time, starting tee, position, event name, position, all those fields anywhere that I want on the scorecard. And the hole pop locator also is a tool that will allow you to position where the hole pops are for each hole. Once you've done that and got the card set up, then you just select this report facility card from your scorecard report list, feed your scorecard stock into your printer, and it'll drop all the fields into it that you've selected to print on the card. And that's how we manage printing on your facility cards. So when you've added scorecards, they will just then appear in your menu by course. So from the reports menu, selecting scorecard and your course, then all of the scorecards that you've created will then appear in your list, and the list will just continue to grow as you add new scorecards. If there are any questions or you need help while designing scorecards, please don't hesitate to call our 24/7 support line at 888-643-1306. This concludes the scorecard